Have you ever experienced something so strange, so unexplainable, that it made you stop and question whether what you were seeing was even real? That's how my story begins. I was never one of those people who had an easy life. Born in a small province where the stars shine brighter than the streetlights, I grew up in a family that barely had enough to eat. My father left when I was 6. My mother, a quiet woman, worked 2 jobs just to keep the roof from collapsing over our heads. I used to think maybe this was normal. Maybe suffering was just the way life was meant to be. My name is Elian, and I've always believed in keeping my head down and surviving each day as it comes. No plans, no expectations. But nothing in life prepared me for what happened during the summer I turned 20. It started subtly. I was living alone in a small boarding house near the university I couldn't afford to attend. The place was old, wooden floorboards that creaked with every step, walls stained yellow from years of smoke and heat, and windows that never fully closed. It wasn't much, but it was home. I worked part-time at a nearby bakery, waking up at 3 a.m. to start the ovens. The job was tiring, but I liked the quiet. It gave me time to think, or sometimes to forget. One of the few bright spots in my life was Leah, my best friend since high school. We didn't have much in common, but somehow we understood each other. She had this laugh that could break through even the darkest mood, and a stubborn belief that there was something more waiting for people like us. May kabutahang darating, Elian, she would always say. You just have to hold on. One evening, we sat on the roof of my boarding house, sharing fish balls and stories, watching the clouds shift into strange shapes. She was talking about her dreams again, silly, impossible things like owning a bookstore by the sea or traveling to Iceland. Baka sa kabilang buhay, I joked. But something shifted in the air that night. A sudden coldness, a silence so deep that even the street dogs stopped barking. I laughed it off. That was my first mistake. The strange things began the next morning. I woke up to the sound of the radio playing softly in the kitchen. Only, I didn't own a radio. I walked in, heart pounding, and found nothing. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and a coffee mug sitting on the counter. I hadn't made coffee. I didn't even have coffee. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just tired, sleep deprived, working too much. But then there were the dreams. Every night, the same dark forest. Trees taller than any I've seen before. A thick fog that clung to my skin. And a whisper so close, like someone breathing against my ear, though I could never understand what it was saying. When I wake up, my hands are always dirty, like I've been digging or crawling. I told Leah about it, laughing nervously. She got quiet. Don't joke about things like that, she said. Dreams like those are warnings. I didn't believe her. Not then. One night, I came home to find a mirror in my room shattered from the inside, though the glass hadn't fallen. It stayed there, cracked like a web of silent screams frozen in time. Then came the smell. It started as a faint scent of burnt wood, always around 2:37 a.m. Every night, I checked the wiring, the walls, even asked the landlord to inspect. Nothing. Everything was fine, but I knew better. Something was changing. Reality or my mind? I couldn't tell. Leah stayed close, though. She would drop by with food or just to sit in silence, sensing that I was too drained to pretend I was okay. One time we sat watching the rain through the rusted screen door when she said, "You know, some things follow you. Not because they want to hurt you, but because you've seen something you shouldn't have." That sentence haunted me, because the more I thought about it, the more I remembered the one thing I had always buried. When I was a child, maybe around 7, I wandered into the forest behind our old house. I had been following something, some kind of shadow. It wasn't an animal. It had no clear shape. It moved between the trees like smoke. I chased it for hours, not even realizing how far I'd gone. And then I saw it. A clearing. Silent. Still. In the center, a figure stood, neither man nor beast, cloaked in tattered black cloth, its face hidden. It raised its hand toward me. I ran. I never told anyone. Until now. Because maybe that wasn't just a childhood nightmare. Maybe it was the beginning. Recently, I've been noticing things that don't make sense. People on the street freeze mid-step when I glance their way. Shadows move where there's no light. And sometimes, just at the edge of sleep, I hear my own voice calling me from outside my room. And last night, something changed. I woke up to find Leah standing at the foot of my bed. But her eyes weren't hers. They were completely black. Empty. She didn't speak. Just stared. Then she smiled. And vanished. I haven't seen her since. And now I'm not sure what's real anymore. Because this morning, I received a message on my phone. It was from Leah. Don't trust her. That wasn't me. So now I'm sitting here recording this. Telling you everything. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows what's happening. And maybe I'm not the only one who's starting to doubt reality. But the scariest part? I think something is watching me right now. From the corner of the room. And it's still smiling. After Leah's message, I sat frozen for what felt like hours. My phone screen dimmed, but her words burned into my thoughts. Don't trust her. That wasn't me. The silence in my room pressed down on me like a weight. I wanted to believe I was dreaming or maybe losing my mind, but something deep inside told me this was real. Something was happening, something far older than me, and far darker than I ever imagined. I tried to call her. No answer. I tried to sleep, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. And a shadow in the corner? It never moved, but I knew it was still there. The next morning, I left the boarding house without looking back. I went to the only place I thought might give me peace, my childhood home in the province. I hadn't been back in years. The house had long been abandoned after my mother passed away and the land was sold to distant relatives. But I still remembered how to get there. I needed answers. The house stood just as I remembered, gray, forgotten, swallowed by overgrown grass. The gate was rusted shut, but I squeezed through. Every step toward the house brought a wave of memories. My mother's voice singing lullabies. The smell of her cooking. My father's rare, bitter laughs before he disappeared one stormy night without explanation. Inside, the dust danced in beams of sunlight. Everything was frozen in time. I walked to the back, to the small altar she used to keep. A picture of a saint still stood there, surrounded by dried flowers and melted candles. And then I saw it. A small box I'd never noticed before, tucked under the altar. Inside, wrapped in old cloth, was something strange. An old kabibi, shaped like a star, smooth and glowing faintly in the dim light. I didn't know what it was, but when I touched it, I felt warmth. Familiar, like it belonged to me. Suddenly, I heard a creak behind me. I turned, heart pounding. An old man stood in the doorway, his face darkened by the sun behind him. His clothes were simple, his feet bare, but his eyes, they were sharp, glowing almost gold. You finally found it, he said in a deep, calm voice. I backed away. Who are you? He stepped inside. I've been watching over this place. Over you. My name is Mang Turo. I was once your Lolo's closest friend, and I knew your mother very well. My mind raced. I had never heard of him. You're not safe? Elian, he said, sitting down slowly. And it's time you knew the truth. He began to tell me a story I wasn't ready for. Your family carries something ancient. A sumpa, not just a curse, but a bloodline burden. Your great-grandmother was once a powerful Babalan, a priestess with healing hands and a gift from the spirits. But she fell in love with a man who wasn't human. He was a swang, a being cursed to feed on the souls of the living. I didn't want to believe it. She tried to change him. Mang Turo continued. But love doesn't cure hunger. When she tried to seal his power using a sacred object, a mutia hidden inside that kabibi, he turned on her. She trapped him between worlds, but the curse passed down. Skipped generations. Until now, I looked at the Kabibi in my hand. It was warm again. Mang Turo's face grew serious. That's why they're after you, Elian. Via Swangs. They've been waiting for the seal to weaken. The night you started dreaming, that was the first crack. I remembered the shadow in my childhood, the forest, the figure reaching out to me. It wasn't just a memory. Why now? I asked. Because you've begun to awaken. The Mutya chose you when your mother died. She protected you as long as she could. But her death broke the last barrier. He stood, reached into his satchel, and pulled out a strange bundle. Leaves tied with red thread, tiny bones, and a dagger carved from black stone. You need to learn to protect yourself, he said. I will teach you what I can, but the path will not be easy. The Aswangs are growing bolder. They know you're still unaware, still untrained. They will try to confuse you. Use the faces of those you love. My chest tightened. Leah, is she still alive? He paused. I don't know, but the thing you saw, that was not her. And if she is still alive, she's in danger because of you. The guilt hit me hard. I had pulled her into something she didn't deserve. Mang Turo took me into the forest behind the house. The same forest I once wandered into as a child. This land remembers, he said, and it will help us if you respect it. We trained every day. He taught me how to mix herbs for protection, how to listen to the wind, how to trace sigils with salt and ashes. The dagger, he said, was made from a Punyal Ing Kalulawa, a weapon that could wound things not of this world. At night, the dreams returned. Darker, more vivid. I began to see faces, some I knew, others I didn't. They whispered in a language I didn't understand. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they laughed. But always, they stared directly at me. During one of our trainings, Mang Turo showed me how to draw a boundary in the dirt using ash and coconut oil. No evil can cross this line, he said. But just as we finished, we heard something beyond the trees. A scream. Faint. Distant. But I knew that voice. Leah. I ran, ignoring Mang Turo's shouts. The trees blurred past me until I found an old clearing, silent, just like the one from my childhood. And in the center was her, or what looked like her. She stood motionless, pale. Her eyes were blank. Elian, she whispered. I took a step forward, and her mouth stretched open, far too wide, revealing rows of teeth that didn't belong to any human. I froze. The Kabibi in my pocket burned against my skin. Behind me, Mang Turo appeared, chanting in a deep voice. The air grew thick. The thing that looked like Leah hissed, then vanished in smoke. You must never run toward the voices, he warned. They're traps. They feed on your guilt. I dropped to my knees, shaking. I can't do this. Mang Turo knelt beside me. Yes, you can. You were born for this. As I looked up at the moon, through the trees, the wind whispered my name again. Elian, but this time it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a warning. Because something worse is coming. And this is only the beginning. Mang Turo said it was only the beginning. But after that night in the clearing, it already felt like the end of something. The end of who I used to be. I wasn't just Elian anymore. The bakery worker, the silent struggler. I was now part of a war I never asked for. One that started long before I was born. But even with the Kabibi in my pocket and Mang Turo beside me, I felt like I was walking blind through a world that kept changing. The days that followed were filled with training and silence. Mang Turo wasn't the type to comfort or explain things gently. He'd say, the enemy doesn't wait for your emotions. And yet, my emotions were the loudest things in my head. Every night, I dreamed of my mother. Sometimes she was standing at the old kitchen sink, her back to me, humming. Other times, she was crying in the forest, blood on her dress, whispering words I couldn't understand. And once, she turned around and her face wasn't hers. It was hollow, black, like she'd been emptied. I woke up shaking. I wanted answers, not symbols, not warnings. I wanted to ask her why she never told me about our bloodline, why she let me grow up thinking I was just unlucky instead of cursed. One afternoon, while Mang Turo was preparing herbs, I returned to the old house alone. Something pulled me there. Maybe it was the memory of her, or maybe it was guilt. I needed to feel close to her again, even in silence. I entered her room, untouched by time. Her old chest still sat at the foot of the bed. I knelt and opened it, expecting only clothes and rosaries. But under the folded dresses, I found something strange, an old notebook, its pages filled with my mother's handwriting. It wasn't a diary. It was a record. Names, dates, symbols. And then, a sentence that made me stop breathing. He came back for Elian. I saw him in the trees, just like before. She knew. She knew the shadow was watching me, even when I was a child. And worse, she didn't stop it. A part of me shattered right then. Why didn't she warn me? Why let me grow up believing I was just ordinary? I slammed the notebook shut and left, rage tightening my chest. That night, I didn't speak to Mang Turo. He didn't ask, but in the forest, I trained harder. Struck the trees with the punyal until my hands bled. Chanted the words he taught me until my throat ached. If I was born into this curse, then I would face it head on. Still, the wound inside me kept growing. That pain became confusion when I saw her again. Leah. At least, I thought it was her. I was walking the narrow trail toward the river, alone, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted, but her face looked real. Elian, she whispered, reaching out. I froze. Please, help me. Before I could speak, Mang Turo appeared out of nowhere, grabbing my arm and yanking me back. That's not her, he growled. I looked again, and Leah's face twisted, eyes sinking into blackness, mouth stretching with sharp, jagged teeth. She hissed, then vanished into mist. That was an Encanto mimic, Mang Turo said, breath heavy. They were the face of what you miss most. I didn't respond. My throat was tight. It wasn't just magic or monsters anymore. It was betrayal, guilt, grief, wearing the skin of someone I loved. That night, Mang Turo finally spoke about my father. You were never told the truth, he said, sitting by the fire. Your father didn't abandon you. He was taken. What do you mean? I asked, voice shaking. He was one of us. A protector. When he found out your mother had been marked by the curse, he tried to break it. He failed, but he didn't leave because he wanted to. He left because the Aswangs forced him into their world. The fire crackled between us. They kept him alive as a warning. A prisoner in the shadow realm. My hands trembled. So he's still out there? Mang tudo not that slow. But saving him is not your path, yet. If you lose focus, they will use him against you. Just like they used Leah. I didn't sleep that night. I sat under the stars, the Kabibi warm in my palm. I thought about my mother's notebook, her silence, my father's sacrifice, and this curse, woven into every corner of my life without me knowing. I wanted to run, but where? There's no freedom from blood, no escape from a war that lives in your own skin. The next morning, the forest gave its warning. Dead birds lined the trail. The trees were quiet, too quiet. Mang Turo and I stood at the edge of the riverbank when we heard the rustle. Not one, many, figures moving through the trees. We didn't speak. He handed me a pouch of salt and whispered, they're testing the boundaries. We drew the protection circle. The wind picked up, and from the shadows, they emerged. 5 of them. Their forms were twisted, half human, half nightmare. Their eyes glowed red. Their movements smooth, calculated. They didn't attack. They stood at the edge, smiling. One of them stepped forward. A woman, tall and graceful, her long hair floating behind her like smoke. Elian, she said, her voice honeyed and sharp. The Mutia is waking. You should return it to us before it's too late. I stepped back, heart racing. You don't belong to them, she added. You belong to us. Your blood is ours. The Kabibi burned in my hand. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Mang Turo raised his staff, chanting. The woman hissed, and in a flash, they vanished. But I knew this wasn't the last time. That night, I sat by the fire again. Mang Turo said nothing. He only handed me the black dagger. You'll need this more than ever now. I nodded. Inside, I was breaking. I wanted to scream, cry, run to a life where monsters didn't exist, where family didn't lie, where love wasn't used as bait. But there was no turning back. I held the Kabibi close to my chest, the pulse of its power matching my own heartbeat. If I was cursed, then so be it. I would carry that curse, fight through it, and learn what it means to be the last of my blood. Because the darkness was coming, and it already knew my name. The days felt shorter now, or maybe it was the shadows that grew longer. Every morning, Mang Turo would wake me before sunrise. No more gentle lessons, no more slow practice. Everything had changed since the night those creatures appeared by the river. He called them the Harbingers, a group of elite Aswangs who only show themselves before something catastrophic. It meant the final movement had begun, and we weren't ready. Even the air around us had changed. It was heavier. The wind didn't whistle anymore. It whispered warnings. The birds had stopped singing. The trees, once green and alive, now bent like they were afraid. The forest was holding its breath. I was too. The Kabibi no longer just pulsed. It burned, especially at night. Sometimes it would glow in short bursts, almost like it was trying to speak. Mang Turo said that meant the other side was getting stronger. They're feeding off fear, he told me one night while we gathered dried herbs. Every doubt you carry, they taste it. It makes them bolder. But how could I not doubt? I carried too many wounds that hadn't healed. Memories of my mother's silence, the truth about my father, the image of Leah's fake face in the woods. I had seen too much and still understood too little. Even when I trained, I often found myself hesitating. What if I failed? What if I wasn't enough? Mang Turo saw it in my movements, in the way my hand would shake before a strike. You're still carrying guilt, he said one afternoon, as if you caused this. But this war isn't your fault. It's your inheritance. It didn't make it easier. It only made it heavier. One evening, we visited the edge of the old town, my hometown. We stayed hidden in the trees, but I could see the rooftops, the small houses, the bakery where I once worked. It was almost unrecognizable. Windows were boarded up. Doors had strange red marks. The people, they moved like ghosts, eyes darting at every sound, as if something walked among them already. Mang Turo. I whispered, they've entered the town. He nodded grimly. They've chosen their feeding ground. If they fully awaken the curse root, this place will fall first. The curse root. I had only heard it mentioned in passing before. But now Mang Turo explained. It was an ancient binding, a spell cast generations ago to hold the Aswang's true power beneath the earth, buried under forgotten soil. And now they were close to breaking it. That night, Mang Turo handed me an old scroll. Inside were drawings, symbols I'd seen carved into the Kabibi, and others I hadn't seen before. One in particular caught my attention, a figure holding light in one hand and darkness in the other. That's you, he said, or who you might become. I stared at the figure for a long time. Why both light and dark? Because your line is not pure. The blood of the enemy runs through you too. I looked up stunned. My mother, I asked. She was cursed, yes, Mang Turo answered softly. But deeper than that, she was once marked by a Mangagaway, a witch of the dark forest. That mark lives in you. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Everything I hoped to be, felt like it cracked right there. So what was I now? A mix of shadow and light? The very threat I was trying to fight? Mang Turo saw the fear in my face. You can still choose, he said, but you must choose soon. From that night on, our training became less about fighting and more about protecting. Mang Turo showed me how to form shields with Oracion, how to set traps that could confuse the mind, how to sense the air for poison or lies. One evening, we found a child alone in the forest, crying lost. I rushed to help, but Mang Turo stopped me. Look again. I looked harder. The child had no shadow. My blood ran cold. We watched silently as the child transformed, its body stretching into an unnatural form, mouth splitting open sideways. Then it screamed, but the sound wasn't human. We left it. We didn't fight. Mang Turo said, "That scream is a signal." We were seen. The enemy knew we were close now. The next day, we found signs everywhere. Scratched trees with blood trails. Animal carcasses arranged in circles. Fog rolling in even during midday. They're preparing for the ritual in Pagbabukas, Mang Turo told me. The ritual of the opening. That's when it would happen. The curse root would awaken, and with it, the full power of the Aswangs would be unleashed, breaking their ancient bonds, giving them freedom to walk even in daylight. We had little time, and I had even less strength. The Kabibi kept glowing hotter. One night, it left a burn mark on my chest in the shape of the same symbol from the scroll, light and dark joined. I knew then that I was changing too, not just in power, but in nature. Sometimes I would feel the thoughts of the enemy, hear whispers that weren't mine, see faces in the fire that weren't there. The part of me tied to the curse, it was awakening too. Resisting it will kill you, Mang Turo said quietly. But giving in will destroy everything. It was a thin line, and I was walking it alone. Still, I didn't stop, even when my body gave out, even when my hands bled from holding the dagger too tightly, even when I saw Leah's face again in the trees, crying, screaming, begging me to save her. It wasn't her, but it reminded me why I had to fight. For those who couldn't, for the ones who trusted me, even for those who betrayed me. One last night before the final battle, Mang Turo and I stood by the river. He placed his hand on my shoulder. "This is your moment, Elian," he said. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already changed fate by surviving this long." I looked out at the water. The moon reflected there, but it was red. A sign. The night of the ritual was near. As we turned to head back, I saw something in the trees. Not a mimic, not a monster, but a figure in chains. My father, alive. He was watching me, eyes filled with sadness and something else. Hope. Before I could step forward, he vanished, gone like a whisper. Mang Turo said nothing, but he saw it too. The enemy was watching, and so was my blood. The pressure was rising. Tomorrow, everything would begin. And maybe everything would end. That night, sleep never came. Even as I lay in silence beside the fire, my eyes stared up at the dark sky above us. The red moon still lingered, half hidden by clouds, but glowing enough to make the night feel unnatural. Mang Turo was resting nearby, his staff beside him, but even in sleep his hand never left it. I could feel something strange crawling beneath my skin. Not fear, not exhaustion. It was a pull, like something was calling me. The Kabibi around my neck was no longer hot. It was cold, ice cold, as if it was warning me about something else. Something not from outside, but within. I stood slowly and walked toward the river. The same river where I saw the chained vision of my father. The water shimmered softly under the moonlight. As I got closer, I noticed something disturbing. There were no reflections. Not mine, not the moon, just blank water. Then suddenly, a voice whispered from behind me, "You're not ready." I turned quickly, heart pounding. No one was there. I gripped the Kabibi tightly, trying to calm myself. But the voice came again, this time from inside my head. "You still believe you're the hero." And then I saw it. From the water emerged a shadow. My shadow. But it wasn't mimicking me. It moved on its own, Jerky, unnatural wrong. Its eyes were hollow. Its mouth opened, but the scream that came out wasn't human. It echoed through the trees, long and sharp, like something being torn apart. Mang Turo was instantly beside me, staff raised, eyes glowing with power. "Back," he shouted. "That's not yours." With one strike of his staff, the shadow vanished back into the water, leaving ripples and a foul scent behind. "What was that?" I asked, breathless. Mang Turo looked at me with a seriousness I'd never seen before. "That was your Kambal Na item, your dark twin, born from the curse inside you." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the water, shaking. "If you don't face it," Mang Turo added, "it will face you. And next time, it won't just mimic, it will try to replace you." I felt sick. The thought of something inside me, growing stronger, wanting to take over, it broke something in me. I wasn't just fighting his swangs. I was fighting myself. The next day, the fog didn't lift. It wrapped around the forest like a blanket, cold and thick. We decided to move camp further up the hills, closer to the Cave of Ancestors, where the final ritual would take place. But halfway through the journey, something happened. Leah returned. She appeared on the trail, weak, bruised, her face pale. I rushed to her without thinking. "Elian, help me." Her voice trembled. Her clothes were torn, her hair matted with dirt and dry blood. I held her, almost crying. "I thought you were—" "They took me," she whispered. "They used me, watched me, but I escaped." Mang Turo stared at her with suspicion, but said nothing. For a moment, I believed she was real, alive, safe. But that night, as she rested by the fire, I caught her reflection in the stream. It blinked 2 seconds after she did. It was off, subtle but enough. I pretended not to notice. At midnight, I snuck out of the camp and placed the Kabibi near her sleeping form. No glow, nothing. The Kabibi only reacted to evil presence. That meant she was clean, or cloaked. "Mang Turo," I said quietly, "what if they found a way to hide inside a living body?" His face paled. "That would mean," he whispered, "they've learned mortal disguise. The final step before full awakening." My stomach turned. The next morning, Leah was gone. Her bedding, untouched. Only a single feather remained. A black one, sharp and cold to the touch. A warning. They were watching us. Closer than we thought. Later that day, we finally reached the Cave of Ancestors. It wasn't a cave, really. More like a mouth carved from stone. Old, sacred, powerful. I could feel the weight of centuries in the air. Inside, the walls were lined with bones. Not just of men, but of creatures long forgotten. Eyes seemed to move in the cracks. Whispers danced on the walls. Here, Mang Turo began the preparation for the final barrier. A spell that would delay the ritual. But we only had hours left. And then, betrayal struck. While Mang Turo meditated, I stepped outside to gather herbs. That's when I saw him. My father. Alive. Real. Not a vision this time. "Elian," he said softly, arms raised. I froze. "You saw me by the river, didn't you?" I nodded, unable to speak. "I'm here now. I escaped them. But you were one of them," I whispered. "Weren't you?" He didn't deny it. "I was cursed. But I resisted. I stayed alive for you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hug him and cry and scream all at once. But my heart was heavy with fear. "You have to trust me," he said. "There's a way to stop the ritual. But Mang Turo won't tell you. He fears what you're capable of." I stepped back slowly. "He raised me, protected me. He used you," my father hissed. "He trained you for his war." My head spun. Was this the truth? Or a trick? Suddenly, Mang Turo appeared behind me. "Don't listen to him," he barked. "He's a Tagapagdala, a carrier of the curse." "I'm his father," the man screamed. "You're his doom." Mang Tudo shouted. And then everything erupted. From the trees came shadows, dozens of them. The swangs, shapeshifters, twisted beasts. They had followed my father. It was a trap. Mang Turo grabbed me, and we ran into the cave. The entrance sealed behind us, the stone mouth closing with a loud boom. But now we were trapped, and the enemy was right outside. Mang Turo collapsed, bleeding from the shoulder. He led them here, I said, breath shaking. He knew we'd run. He wants the cave, Mang Turo said weakly. He wants the Heartstone. What's that? In the center of this cave is the true anchor of the curse. If they destroy it, nothing can hold them back anymore. I stood, heart pounding. I had one choice now. Either guard the Heartstone until dawn, or let the darkness in. And as I walked deeper into the cave, toward the glowing red core buried in the ground, I heard the enemy's voice echoing from the stone walls. Elian, you belong to us. You were never meant to save. You were meant to open the gate. I closed my eyes, and I whispered to myself, I choose who I become. But the voice only laughed, because the real battle had just begun. The Heartstone pulsed beneath Elian's feet, glowing red like a heartbeat buried deep in the cave's floor. Its light spread through the walls, casting eerie, shifting shadows. Each beat sent a sharp pulse through his chest, like it was trying to connect with something inside him. Something old, something buried. He knelt beside it, placing a hand on the stone. It was warm, alive, and it was waiting. Outside, the storm had begun. Thunder cracked. The sealed cave shook from the force of claws and fists beating against its stone entrance. Mang Turo lay unconscious by the wall, weakened and pale, his life force fading. The Aswangs were coming. But worse, the shadow within Elian stirred again. The Kambalna item, his dark twin, was awake. You can't stop it, the voice whispered inside him. You're part of it. You were born for the curse. Elian gritted his teeth. His hand tightened around the glowing Kabibi on his chest. No, he said through clenched teeth. I was born from pain, but I choose how it ends. A shrill scream echoed from the entrance as the stone began to crack. Dust fell. The final barrier was breaking. They didn't have much time. Suddenly, a swirl of dark mist appeared near the Heartstone. From it emerged a shape, humanoid but stretched, with glowing white eyes and skin that shimmered like moonlit oil. Its voice was ancient, layered, like 1,000 whispers in one. Elian, it said calmly, you have reached the crossing point. The stone can either be used to bind or release. What will you choose? He stared at it. Who are you? I am a guardian of the Heartstone. I was born from the first curse, long before your bloodline was touched. I protect the balance, but I cannot interfere. Elian felt something rise inside him. Fear, yes, but something more. Clarity. Tell me the truth, he said. Why me? Why my family? The guardian tilted its head. Because your blood holds a key. Your ancestor made a choice long ago. He chose power over love. He opened a gate he was meant to guard. And now, the curse looks for a descendant strong enough to finish what he started. My father, yes, the being replied. He was offered the same power. He accepted it, partially, enough to let the darkness in, but not enough to control it. Elian's heart sank. Everything he feared was true. So, if I break the Heartstone, the curse ends? No, the guardian answered. If you break it, the gate opens fully. The Aswangs rise unbound. If you bind it, you seal the curse, but at a cost. What cost? The guardian's eyes dimmed. You lose everything tied to it. The bloodline, the power, even your memories of the pain. Elian's breath caught. His past, his mother's lullabies, his father's broken smile, Leah's touch, all of it, gone. A sudden explosion shook the cave. The entrance cracked wide open. Screams echoed inside. Dark forms poured in, claws, fangs, eyes glowing in the shadows. Leading them was his father, but he looked different now. Transformed. His skin was gray, stretched tight, his teeth long and jagged. His eyes, once sad, were now full of hunger. "Elian," he growled, "step away from the stone." Elian stood, face trembling. "You lied to me." "I protected you," his father said. "I gave you strength. You were born to rule beside me." "No," Elian said softly. "I was born to end this." With a snarl, his father lunged, but Elian was ready. He held the Kabibi high. It exploded with blinding light, stunning the creatures momentarily. Elian ran toward the Heartstone, but his father recovered faster than expected, grabbing him by the shoulder and slamming him to the ground. Pain shot through Elian's ribs. "You're too weak," the dark voice said, rising again in Elian's mind. "Let me take over. Let me save us both." For a split second, he was tempted. He could feel the dark twin waiting. So much power, so much rage. If he just let go. But then he remembered Mang Turo's words. "If you don't face it, it will face you." He turned inward, faced a shadow inside. It stood before him, a perfect copy, but its eyes were empty. "I'm not afraid of you," Elian said in his mind. "You are me." "No," Elian said. "I'm the one who chooses." He stepped forward and embraced the shadow. And for the first time, it didn't fight back. It dissolved into him, became light. Elian opened his eyes. His body glowed, pure, steady. His father stepped back, stunned. "What have you done?" "I've accepted what you never could," Elian said. "All of me." With one final breath, Elian slammed his hand onto the Heartstone. A blinding shock wave erupted. All around, the walls lit up. Symbols glowed. The Aswang screamed. Some disintegrated. Others fled into the shadows, howling. His father let out a roar, part pain, part sorrow. No, not like this. The light reached him, and in one final moment, Elian saw the man behind the monster. A father who had failed. A man too broken to rise again. And then he was gone. The Heartstone stopped pulsing. Silence returned. Smoke filled the air. The cave trembled, but didn't collapse. Outside, the red moon faded. Dawn was coming. Elian collapsed beside Mang Turo, who had regained consciousness. "You did it," Mang Turo whispered, touching his arm. "You made the right choice." Elian didn't answer. Tears fell from his eyes. He couldn't feel the Kabibi anymore. Couldn't feel the power. The memories of the curse, the pain, were already slipping away. "I'm forgetting," he whispered. "Mang tudo not that sali." It is the cost of peace. But how do I live with the emptiness? You fill it with new stories. Elian stared at the rising sun. Something deep inside had ended, but something else had just begun. And yet, just as he stood up, a cold breeze swept through the cave. From a crack in the far wall, a small whisper. Soft, weak. Elian, a child's voice. A girl. He turned sharply. There was no one there. Only a tiny footprint in the dust. Fresh. Elian froze. Something wasn't over. Not yet. The story was still being written. The sun had fully risen by the time Elian and Mang Turo stepped out of the cave. The thick fog that once covered the forest had disappeared, replaced by golden rays streaming through the trees. It felt quiet, too quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Elian looked down at his hands. They felt lighter, ordinary. The power was gone, yes, but so was the constant weight he'd carried. The curse had been sealed. The darkness no longer whispered. But with that peace came a different kind of ache, emptiness. He could still feel her voice. That tiny whisper, Elian, he didn't tell Mang Turo about it. Not yet. They returned to the village that afternoon. The people who had once looked at Elian with suspicion now stood silently, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. Some of them had heard the screams from the mountain. Some saw the black clouds vanish in an instant. They knew something had happened. but none could truly understand what it had cost. Liao was waiting at the edge of the rice field, hands trembling, eyes filled with tears. She ran toward him without a word and hugged him tightly, as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "I almost was," Elian answered. She pulled back, looking into his eyes. "But you did it, didn't you?" He nodded. "The curse is sealed. They're gone. For now," he thought, but he didn't say it aloud. Mang Turo spent the next few days resting and preparing protective wards around the village, just in case. He said the seal was strong, but not unbreakable. Evil always finds cracks, he warned, but with proper vigilance, the village would remain safe. Elian didn't stay long. He knew he couldn't just return to normal life. Too much had changed. He couldn't unsee the truth, couldn't unknow what he had learned, not just about the curse, but about himself. He visited the grave of his mother, laid a single white flower on the soil. "I understand now," he whispered. "You tried to protect me. You didn't tell me everything because you were afraid I'd walk the same path as him." He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. "But I forgive you." The wind gently rustled the trees, as if in response. Days passed, then weeks. The village returned to its routine. Children laughed again in the fields. The elderly shared stories at dusk. But whenever they spoke of the events that night, they would only say one name with reverence: Elian. He had become part of their folklore now, a boy born from shadow who chose the light. But Elian was not content with being a tale. He had one more journey to make. One morning, without warning, he left. Only Lian knew where he had gone. He returned to the cave, not to fight, not to seal anything, but to follow the whisper. Deep inside, past the Heartstone, through a narrow tunnel now opened by the quake, he followed the sound. It was faint, but clear. Elian, and then he found her. A girl no older than 6, sitting on a stone, pale, fragile, but with eyes too ancient for her age. She looked up and smiled faintly. "You came." Elian approached slowly, heart pounding. "Who are you?" "I'm the last memory," she said simply. "Left behind when the curse was sealed. The soul that wasn't taken, but wasn't freed." "You're part of me?" he asked. She nodded. "Or maybe I'm part of what you left behind." He didn't understand completely, but he didn't need to. He knelt beside her. "Do you want to come with me?" She looked uncertain. "If I leave, I disappear." Elian's chest tightened. "Then I'll stay a little while." They sat together in silence. The light from the Heartstone dimmed now, like a fading ember. After a while, she leaned against him and closed her eyes. When he looked again, she was gone. Just dust. But he didn't feel sorrow. He felt release. Elian emerged from the mountain one final time, the wind cool against his face. The sky was clear. For the first time in his life, he felt no burden, only peace. He returned to the village months later, not as a warrior, but as a healer. Mang Turo had passed by then, his body too tired to continue. But he had left everything in Elian's care: his books, his herbs, his knowledge. Liao welcomed him home with open arms. Together, they rebuilt the small hut at the edge of the field, not just for them, but for anyone lost, afraid, or searching. One night, as fireflies danced outside and the rice paddies shimmered under the moonlight, Liao asked him, "Do you ever think about it? About what might have happened if you chose differently?" Elian didn't answer right away. He looked out at the fields, at the stars above. "Yes," he said, "but I also know I couldn't have chosen any other way." Liao leaned against his shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." He smiled, resting his hand over hers. "I never was," he whispered. In the years that followed, children would gather at the hut to listen to Elian's stories. He told them tales of courage, sacrifice, and light born from darkness. He never said they were his stories, but something in his eyes always told the truth. And when the wind would sometimes carry a soft whisper through the trees, Elian would close his eyes and listen, smiling gently. Because he knew, somewhere beyond the veil, the story continued. But for now, he had found his ending, and it was enough. The end.